So I am well aware of the fact that it sounds unrealistic to talk about removing Donald Trump from office because we have no standards in this country. We just let politicians commit crimes with impunity and get away with corruption. But after he crossed a new line this week, it would feel irresponsible to not have a serious conversation about invoking the 25th Amendment or even impeachment because this man is a danger to the country. And we need to treat him like the danger that he is. And I say that because he became unreasonably enraged by a PSA that 6 Democrats released where they simply tell members of the military to disobey illegal orders. Now, to be clear, when I say that he became enraged, what I mean is that he called for the execution of these Democrats. But before we get to his response, here's a portion of the PSA in question.
The threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
We know this is hard,
And that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
in the Army,
Our Navy,
the Air Force,
Your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
Now, this is actually really important because, as you all know, Trump is pitting the U.S. military against American citizens, and he's ordering ICE to violate laws. And they need to know that they will be held accountable for these crimes regardless if Trump says it's okay to commit them or not. And these Democrats are telling members of the armed services that they will protect them from Trump's wrath if they rightfully disobey an illegal order. But if they follow Trump down the path towards hell, they need to know that the whole "I'm just following orders" defense is not going to hold. During the Nuremberg tribunals, Nazis argued that low-level officers should be exempt from prosecution, seeing as how they were forced to serve as mere instruments of the regime, but that argument was rejected then, and it'll be rejected now. And all of the things that Trump's low-level cronies are doing will catch up to them at some point. But Democrats wouldn't even need to make that PSA if Trump wasn't using the military to invade U.S. cities. And aside from the military, Trump's Gestapo also needs to hear that message too, seeing as how they seem to think that they're going to get away with all of the atrocities that they're committing. Case in point, a Chinese immigrant in ICE detention was found dead with his hands and feet tied behind him. An American citizen in Charlotte was assaulted, then kidnapped by ICE, only to be dropped off 2 miles away after they realized they didn't have the right person. In fact, ICE has arrested and assaulted at least 170 U.S. citizens, likely due to racial profiling that the Supreme Court greenlit. And the reason why this Gestapo-like secret police force is becoming so tyrannical is because they were told by Stephen Miller that they have federal immunity. But it's important to remind members of the armed forces and federal agents that they are not above the law despite what Trump tells them. But here's what he said in response to that PSA. It's called seditious behavior at the highest level. Each one of these traitors to our country should be arrested and put on trial. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. We won't have a country anymore. An example must be set. He then shared posts calling them domestic terrorists, along with calls for them to be charged with sedition. And he shared a post calling for them to be hanged. And finally, he said it was seditious behavior punishable by death. So he's calling for these Democrats to be murdered for simply saying that members of the military cannot comply with unlawful orders, which is a fact. And if he were smart, he'd say, my administration, of course, is upholding the rule of law and the Constitution, and the mere accusation that we would give unlawful orders in the first place is deeply offensive. But he's not saying that because he knows that he is. But since the Supreme Court gave him near absolute immunity, he's not even trying to give himself plausible deniability because why would he? He knows he can say and do whatever he wants and get away with it. So he's basically admitting, yeah, bitch, I'm telling them to break laws, and they have to do it because the law is what I say it is. And this was literally the defense that was offered by his White House press secretary.
They are literally saying to 1.3 million active duty service members not to defy the chain of command, not to follow lawful orders. Every single
an illegal order, which
but
is
they are
illegal
but they're suggesting, Nancy, that the president has given illegal orders, which he has not. Every single order that is given to this United States military by this commander-in-chief and through this chain of command, through the Secretary of War, is lawful.
Amazing. He's not telling them to violate laws because the law is what he says it is. Therefore, anything he commands is automatically legal by definition. As Trump put it, he who saves his country does not violate any law. Right, Carolyn? And that authoritarian philosophy is clearly guiding how he governs, hence why his regime has been so goddamn lawless. Hence why he's trying to overturn constitutional amendments with executive orders. Hence why he's subverting Congress by taking away money that they've already appropriated. And we haven't even touched on the brazen corruption and how he's violating the emoluments clause in a million different ways. Some More News actually put out an hour-long video detailing all of the ways that Trump is using the presidency to enrich himself. And the things they talk about, those are grounds for impeachment by themselves. But we haven't even mentioned the illegal bombing of fishing boats in the Caribbean. And now he's prosecuting the drug war in the same way that Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines did. The only difference between the two of them is that Duterte is awaiting prosecution at The Hague as we speak, whereas Donald Trump knows he'll never see a day in jail in his entire fucking life for the crimes that he's committing. Because we have a system where our Supreme Court said he has near absolute immunity, so he's above the law, and since they granted him that immunity, well, he's behaving as if he's above the law, because why wouldn't he? But now we've reached this point where he's literally calling for the execution of his political opponents. And this comes months after he has weaponized the DOJ to go after his political enemies. We are dealing with a petty tin pot dictator who's behaving as if he'll never be held accountable for his crimes, because he probably is never going to be held accountable for his crimes. But even though it's not too difficult to imagine our dementia-ridden president getting worked into a tizzy by himself, seeing as how, this is somebody who calls female journalists piggy, I'd guess that Stephen Miller's overly hyperbolic, screechy reaction is what initially set Trump off, because Miller has a lot of influence on the Trump regime. And just to show you what I mean, here was his reaction on Fox News. This is crazy shit.
It truly is an incredible video, Stephen, and one that you see as insurrection?
It is insurrection, plainly, directly, without question. And when you have one of the lawmakers on that video being unable to state in, as you say, lengthy cross-examination, a single so-called illegal order, it just proves the point. It's a general call for rebellion from the CIA and the armed services of the United States by Democrat lawmakers, saying that you have not only the right but the duty and the obligation to defy orders of the commander-in-chief, that those who carry weapons in America's name should defy their chain of command and engage in open acts of insurrection, that the CIA, the clandestine service, which isn't even legally authorized to operate in the United States, should engage in, again, acts of rebellion and insurrection. These lawmakers should honestly resign in disgrace and never return to public office again for even daring to think, let alone to say these words, and to say them proudly. But it shows what a dangerous moment we're in. We have seen the Democratic Party nurse the flames of violence and insurrection against the federal government for the last 10 months.
It's like nails on a chalkboard, and he's wrong. But I'm assuming Trump watched that segment and thought, yeah, they're nursing the flames of violence, so we should kill them for being so violent or something. And I love how everything is insurrection to these dipshits. It's like they learned a new word on January 6th, and now they just call everything insurrection, even though that's definitionally not the case. And we already know that if a Democratic president was committing even a fraction of the crimes that Trump was committing, every single one of these people, Stephen Miller, Carolyn Levitt, Donald Trump himself, would be shrieking at the top of their lungs about how this is wrong and how he has to be removed, rightfully so, might I add. But since it's Daddy Trump, the so-called small government anti-tyranny Republicans are too cucked to be principled and say enough is enough once and for all. For example, when Mike Johnson was asked about Trump's comments, he had some really strong words. He had a condemnation, although it wasn't for Donald Trump. It was for the Democrats who he threatened to kill.
The president posted that Democrats who urge service members to not follow illegal orders should be punished, it should be seditious, conspiracy, and punishable by death. Give me a response to that.
Look, I know the DOJ and the Pentagon are looking into the legality of all that, but what I can address is what everybody knows. That was wildly inappropriate. It is very dangerous. You have leading members of Congress telling troops to disobey orders. I think that's unprecedented in American history. And as the father of a young man who is, at the Naval Academy, going to be joining the service, I know young soldiers, airmen, sailors, they don't need that kind of nonsense from people in Congress. It is very dangerous. At a very dangerous time. I'm going to let others define what it is, but it's wildly inappropriate.
Incredible. Telling service members to disobey illegal orders is very dangerous, but calling for the execution of people, that's A-okay. Sure thing, Mike. Sounds legit. Listen, what we're watching is political theater from the Republican Party on a mass scale. So many Republicans who once denounced Donald Trump and called him a clown are licking his boots because they feel like they have to, seeing as how defying him would jeopardize their political careers because the base loves him. But guess what? The political winds, slowly but surely, are starting to change, and Trump is starting to lose the political clout that he once had. He's no longer untouchable, and these Republicans may soon have the political capital needed to dump this orange piece of shit once and for all. There's no question that he's committing high crimes and misdemeanors. He's already mentally incapacitated and unstable enough to the point to warrant invocation of the 25th Amendment, in my opinion. But the only thing missing right now still is enough political will to remove him. But Republicans might have to consider it in the near future before his toxic brand drags all of them down, because we still haven't seen what's in the Epstein files. And on top of that, a Fox News poll has him at his lowest point ever. His overall disapproval is at 58%, which is the highest it's ever been in a Fox News poll. Not to mention he's underwater on almost every issue, including healthcare, tariffs, the economy, foreign policy, even immigration. And the only issue he's a net positive on is the border. On the economy, which matters most to voters, he is a sinking ship. Even 42% of Republicans blame him for the current economic predicament. That is a large number for this party. Also, a plurality of respondents say that his policies hurt the economy. But get this, when it comes to views on affordability, 60% of the country say groceries increased a lot, with a total of 85% saying they increased overall. And the majority of Americans also believe that the cost of utilities, healthcare, and housing have also increased. These are the kinds of things that the party in power always gets blamed for. And a new Marquette University poll indicates that the GOP is indeed cooked, as CNN data analyst Harry Anton explains.
These numbers should be truly frightening to Republicans. Why do I point it out? Why do I say that? Okay, Dems versus Republicans on the generic congressional ballot. If you look at all voters, this matches the average. You see Democrats up by 5 points. Okay, that's not a bad position, but it's not as strong as they were in the 2018 cycle at this point. But come over to this side of the screen. This is where it gets truly frightening for the GOP, because among those certain to vote, look at this. The Democratic advantage nearly doubles. We're talking about a 9-point advantage going from 5 to 9 points. And this matches with what we're seeing in other polls, which is huge Democratic enthusiasm. The reason it was surprising to me was I went back through the history books. I went back, okay, party more certain to vote by party identification. Early cycle midterm polls. Look at this. In 2006, Republicans said they were more likely to turn out. 2010, 2014, 2018, 2022. And then all of a sudden in the 2026 cycle, look at this. Democrats are the ones who say they're more likely to turn out and vote. So this does not match what we see historically. The idea that Democrats are more certain to vote is a new phenomenon. Polls underestimated the Democrats. In New Jersey, they underestimated the Democrat Mikey Sherrill by 8. In Virginia, they underestimated the Democrat Abigail Spanberger by 5. And that, in fact, was the biggest miss average in Virginia and New Jersey in an off-year election this century. You combine that with the generic ballot poll that we saw from Marquette University poll, Republicans should be running scared. Democrats should be ecstatic, because if this polling holds, it will be a huge November 2026 for Democrats.
So there's reason to believe that the polling, which already looks great for Democrats, is still underestimating them, as good as it looks. Meaning that the backlash to Trump among Democrats is so intense, it could lead to a historic wipeout for Republicans in the midterms. And keep in mind, Democrats are putting up these kinds of numbers with how unpopular they still are, which really goes to show you how turned off people are to Donald Trump's regime just a year in. And these numbers are going to get worse if nothing changes. And on top of that, if the AI bubble bursts, like we all expect it to, and we enter a recession or depression, that could be a catastrophic thing for the Republican Party, because the party in power, they always get blamed for economic woes. It's like a hot potato. The question is, when is it going to blow up?
Donald Trump spent the morning calling for the trial and execution of 6 Democratic members of Congress and the Senate who all served in the military or the CIA, all because of this video they put together addressing members of the armed forces and intelligence community.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
Americans trust their military.
But that trust is at risk.
This administration is pitting our uniformed military
And intelligence community professionals
against American citizens.
like us. You all swore an oath
to protect and defend this Constitution.
And right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad,
but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law
or our Constitution.
We need you to stand up for our laws,
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
Now, plainly, there's nothing in that video that isn't taught to every military officer as part of their training. They take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. And disobeying illegal orders is not sedition or treason. It's a duty. This is obvious to everyone, but we have a commander-in-chief who is actually likely to give that illegal order and perhaps has already done so. And so he responded by going off the deep end on social media today, quote, "This is really bad and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from creators, lock them up." An hour later, he posted that the video was, quote, "seditious behavior, punishable by death." He also reposted calls from supporters to hang those Democrats for treason. Senator Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, one of the Democrats in the video, she served in the CIA and is a Pentagon official before coming to Congress, and she joins me now. Senator, it's good to have you.
Thanks.
First, let me just ask, what has it meant for you to have the president say this about you, to call you seditious and treasonous and to repost someone calling for you to be hanged?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it more than the six of us who filmed the video, it's really just a sad moment in American politics. I mean, we know that, but, you know, today it really came home for many of us. And I think for the six of us that filmed this, you know, we swore an oath to the Constitution many times before we got to Congress. What we were citing was literally chapter and verse from the UCMJ, the Military Code of Justice. And I think his reaction just is, you know, characteristic of a political system that no one is proud of right now.
Does something like this change your security situation? We heard Marjorie Taylor Greene talk about that last week. You're nodding your head. I mean, this has very tangible effects. I've seen and with other lawmakers in somewhat analogous situations.
Yeah, I mean, look, over the years, I've had threats here and there. It was instantaneous. I mean, hundreds, if not at this point, thousands of calls, emails, texts, obviously online postings. Capitol Police came to us and said, you know, we're going to put you on 24/7 security. We've got law enforcement out in front of my house. I mean, it changes things immediately. And leadership climate is set from the top. And if president is saying you should be hanged, then we shouldn't be surprised when folks on the ground are going to follow suit and say even worse. So I think for all of us, it has fundamentally changed our security situation. But I will say it doesn't change how I feel about coming on TV now and talking about it or saying what I said today. I think it only strengthens that. I mean, he is trying to use fear as a weapon. He's trying to distract us from whatever he doesn't want to talk about, the Epstein files or whatever else. But he's also trying to intimidate people out of criticizing him. That's the entire game here. And then he's trying to intimidate people in his party to keep quiet, even when he does things that violate our norms. And he can wield that on some, but it just doesn't work for people who have served and have done other dangerous things in our lives.
Why did you want to make the video? What were you trying to accomplish with it?
Yeah, I think, you know, all of us had been getting outreach from folks in uniform, folks in the intelligence community, saying like, hey, we're really concerned. You know, I'm being deployed to a city. or, inside the United States, or I'm being asked to conduct strikes in the Mediterranean and I don't understand how this is legal. We were hearing from a lot of people, still hearing, and are hearing from a lot of them today, and they've watched as the senior officers and mid-ranking officers have either been removed or basically forced to retire. And I think there's a lot of concern about, what if I'm asked to do something that's not legal, or what if I'm not sure if this is legal? So we just wanted to make the point to say to the group, look, we hear you. We know what it's like to be in tough positions. It's a chain of command environment, so you are to follow orders. But there is a provision in the UCMJ going back to Nuremberg and World War II, making clear that you do not have to follow an order that is illegal, that violates the law. And I think, people have been asking, well, is this theoretical and what are you concerned about? Unfortunately, President Trump, this is not theoretical for him. Right? In his first term, he was upset about the peaceful protests outside the White House in Lafayette Square during the George Floyd protests. And it got under his skin, and he called in his then Secretary of Defense and chairman of the Joint Chiefs and said, bring in the 82nd Airborne, bring in active duty troops, and, can't you, quote, shoot at their legs? And to the credit of the then Secretary of Defense, they sort of maneuvered themselves out of the Oval Office before he followed up and sort of demanded that of them. But that is a perfect example of an illegal order. You cannot shoot at unarmed people. And I would hope that anyone, like the Secretary of Defense and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who knew immediately that that wasn't right, that anyone in government would feel that way. Anyone who sits in the chair of the commander-in-chief would feel that way. But it's not a hypothetical.
What you heard there in the speaker's quote was two things. At the very end there, you heard a lie, which is that these 6 members urged the disobeying of lawful orders. You can watch it. That's not at all what they did. So you heard a lie. And in the seconds before that, you heard what we live within this building, which is that I would rather promote a dangerous falsehood from our saint and dictator, Donald Trump, than I would actually want to do my constitutional duty to stand up against, to provide a check and a balance against the executive, right? Especially when that executive is not involved in a policy disagreement, but when that executive is saying something that is both untrue and very, very dangerous. Look, you just saw the demonstration of Republican leadership. A lie and lickspittle word salad designed to pledge, once again, allegiance to Donald Trump.
Here's the thing. None of this is amorphous. We're talking about all of this because of the strikes that the president has ordered off the coast of Venezuela. Alyssa Slotkin told the New York Times that active troops told her they were concerned about the legality of those strikes. Now you have NBC News reporting this. The senior military lawyer for the combatant command overseeing lethal strikes on alleged drug smuggling boats near Venezuela disagreed with the Trump administration's position that the operations are lawful, and his views were sidelined. That's according to 6 sources with knowledge of the legal advice. The JAG at Southern Command specifically expressed concern that strikes against people on boats in the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific Ocean, whom administration officials call narco-terrorists, could amount to extrajudicial killings, the 6 sources said, and therefore legally expose service members involved in the operations. I know there's also been reporting that there is a memo floating around the White House that says, don't worry, these service members won't have legal liability. The fact that they are in a position where the White House does not have a cohesive legal argument for what they are doing, it seems to me it is inarguably putting our service members at risk. Your take?
Yeah, and what you just asked me about, of course, is critical context to what we were just talking about, right?
Donald Trump is threatening death on at least 6 Democratic Congresspeople. That's what he's doing. And they're right in saying that this is a moment where everyone needs to speak out against it. This is what Trump's doing. He's using the power of the presidency, and from the pulpit of the presidency, from the podium of the presidency, essentially saying these 6 Democrats need to face capital punishment. That's what he's doing. That's scary stuff. And this is a man who, again, his movement, and people, the guys, look, Seemingly millions of Americans forgot about it in the last election, but it's not even been 5 years since J6. And on that day, Trump's thugs said they were going to hang Mike Pence. And God knows what they would have done if go back and listen to what AOC said she feared would happen to her that day. Unspeakable stuff. What would have happened to Nancy Pelosi, Mitt Romney, any Democrat or and probably any Republican seen as not being with the people that supported the coup. That was less than five. That was January of 2021. Not even 5 years ago. And Trump praised those people and pardoned those people unequivocally. Not just the nonviolent ones, pardoned them all, essentially. And so this is a man that is not beyond using the threat of death against his opponents, either directly saying it himself here or allowing his movement to do it, and not only allowing them to do it without any pushback, really, but tacitly encouraging it by calling them patriots, by pardoning them, by saying that they're political prisoners and whatnot. And you remember even the private phone calls. Remember those days where I think Kevin McCarthy and some other Republicans were on the phone with him while they were basically hiding away, barricaded away. And they were worried for their life, rightfully so. And then they called Trump to call off his dogs. And then he was like, well, maybe they're right to be angry, Kevin. If you were this angry, we wouldn't have lost. So this is Donald Trump. This is a man who will use the threat of fatal violence to achieve his objectives. Don't you ever forget that.